Hencher's thoughts were full of shame as he sat there, recalling the times when he and Parfrey had been friends. He heard a conversation below, the opening of a door, the starting of a carriage, but he took no notice. There he stayed until it was quite dark. At last he arose, shook the dust from his clothes wearily, felt his way to the ladder, and climbed slowly down into the yard. He thought highly of me once, he murmured. Now he'll hate and despise me forever. He felt a terrible need to see Farfrey again that night, to try to win pardon for his mad attack. But as he walked towards Farfrey's door, he recalled what had happened in the yard just before. Farfrey had been going out and while getting the horse and carriage ready, had spoken to someone. He had said that he would not be going to Budmouth as he had intended, that he had been asked unexpectedly to go to Weatherbury and he would therefore go there first and then go on to Mellstock while he had some business. Then he would come home, leaving the Budmouth trip for another time. This meant it would be useless to call at Farfrey's house until very late. There was nothing to do but wait for his return, though waiting was almost torture to Henchard's restless and unhappy soul. He walked along the streets in the outskirts of the town. Dimly in the distance he heard the sounds of music and noise and beating drums. At first he thought it was the town band attempting to finish off this royal day with some music. But then he realized the sounds he heard came from no band. This noise was harsh and terrible to hear. It was about 8 o'clock and Lucetta was sitting in the sitting room alone. She kept one of the windows a little way open so that the sound of Farfrey's carriage returning would reach her ears early. She was leaning back in her chair, hopeful and content. The day had been a success. The uneasiness which Henchard's appearance and behavior had caused had gone. As soon as her husband had made him move off, the written evidence of her silly passion for Henchard had been destroyed. She really seemed to have no cause for fear, and so her thoughts ran slowly on, but gradually they were disturbed by a distant noise, which seemed to be increasing all the time. It did not really surprise her, since most of the town people were now celebrating the royal visit in their own way. But her attention was soon caught by some servants outside, talking loudly about a procession. It seemed from what they were saying that the procession was coming up Corn Street. Leading the way was a donkey, carrying the straw figures of a man and a woman. The figures were tied together, back to back, so that one faced to the front and the other to the rear. The male figure, so the servants were saying, had been made up to look like Hencher. The other appeared to be Lucetta. Lucetta jumped to her feet, and almost at the same instant, the door of the room was quickly and softly opened. Elizabeth Jane advanced into the firelight. I have come to see you, she said breathlessly. I did not stop to knock. Forgive me. I see you have not shut your windows and the curtains are open. Without waiting for Lucetta's reply, she crossed quickly to the nearest window and shut it and pulled one of her curtains. Lucetta ran to her side. Let it be. Hush, she ordered in a dry voice, while she seized Elizabeth Jane by the hand. The words spoken outside now came clearly into the room. Look, there she is. She has a bright silk dress on, and white stockings, and colored shoes. Again, Elizabeth Jane attempted to close the window, but Lucetta held her back. It's me, she said, staring into the street with a face as pale as death. A procession, a scandal, a figure of me and him. The look on Elizabeth Jane's face showed that she already knew. Let us shut it out, said Elizabeth Jane soothingly. Seeing that Lucetta was frozen and terrified as the noise came nearer and nearer. Let us shut it out. It's no use, screamed Lucetta. He will see it, won't he? Donald will see it. He is on his way home now. He must be, and it will break his heart. He will never love me any more, and it will kill me. Kill me. At that, Lucetta fell weakly to the floor. Elizabeth Jane was very frightened. She called for the servants, and at last they came and carried Lucetta to her room. One of them was sent to fetch the doctor. The doctor arrived with unexpected quickness. As soon as he saw Lucetta, he said in answer to Elizabeth Jane's silent, worried face, "This is serious. She is pregnant, you know, and I fear for her and the unborn child. You must send at once for Mr. Farfrae." A man was immediately sent off to Budmouth to find Farfrae. At the bottom end of Corn Street, Hancher too had witnessed the procession. He knew what it all meant. He decided to go to his stepdaughter's lodgings, but was told when he got there that Elizabeth Jane had gone to Mrs. Farfrae's. Like someone walking in his sleep, he followed in the same direction in the hope of meeting her. The procession having broken up by this time, this was not to be. So finally he knocked gently at the door of his former house. He quickly learned what had happened there, together with the doctor's orders that Farfrae should be brought home as quickly as possible, and how a man had been sent out to meet him on the Birdmouth Road. But he has gone to Weatherbury and Mellstock, said Henchard with horror. He did not go on the Budmouth Road at all. But no one would believe him. He had completely lost everyone's trust, though Lucetta's life seemed at that moment to depend on her husband's return. No messenger was sent towards Weatherbury. Hanchard said that he would go and look for Farfrae himself. He quickly set off towards Weatherbury, at the foot of a hill, about 3 miles from Casterbridge. He stopped and listened. Presently he heard Farfrae's carriage in the distance. The vehicle had a noise all its own, and had in fact belonged to Henchard, until the Scotsman had brought it when Henchard was bankrupt. Henchard waited. As it came closer, the carriage lamp flashed in Henchard's face, and with a start Farfrae saw the man who had almost tried to kill him standing at the side of the road. "Farfrae, Mr. Farfrae!" cried the breathless Henchard. Holding up his hand, Farfrae allowed his horse to go several steps past Henchard before he pulled up. "Yes," he said over his shoulder, coldly, clearly, believing he was speaking to an enemy. "Come back to Casterbridge at once," Henchard said. "There's something wrong at your house." requiring your return. I have run all the way here on purpose to tell you. Farfrey was silent, and at his silence, Hancher's soul sank. Why had he not before this thought of how Farfrey would look at him here now? He who only 4 hours earlier had forced Farfrey into a deadly fight was now standing late at night on a lonely road, telling him to go a particular way, where he could so easily be attacked again, though this time by a group of men perhaps. Hanchard could almost feel Farfrey thinking his very thoughts. I have to go to Malistock, said Farfrey coldly, but pleaded Hanchard. The matter is more serious than your business in Malistock. It is your wife. She is ill. I can tell you how it is as we go. The very fact that Henchard was so upset and abrupt increased Farfrey's suspicions that Henchard really meant to attack him again and finish what he had failed to do earlier. He started the horse and carriage moved forward. I know what this must look like to you, cried Henchard as he ran alongside the carriage. But I am not what you think. Believe me, Farfrey, your wife is in danger. I know, no more than that, but they want you to come. Your servant has mistakenly gone to find you on the Budmouth Road. Oh, Farfrey, please believe me. I am a dreadful man, but I mean you no harm this time. Farfrey, however, distrusted him completely. He knew his wife was expecting a child, but he had left her not long ago in perfect health. He made his horse go faster, and Henchard fell behind. Henchard returned wearily to Casterbridge and went again to Farfrey's house. As soon as the doctor opened, anxious faces looked at him. The servant sent to the Birdmouth Road had returned already, having learned his mistake. All hopes had been centered on Henchard. But haven't you found him? Said the doctor. Yes, but, but, I can't tell you, Henchard replied as he sank down on a chair near the door. He can't be home for 2 hours. Elizabeth Jane came forward down the stairs. How is she? Henchard asked. In great danger, father. Her anxiety to see her husband makes her fearfully restless. Poor woman! I fear they have killed her. Hanchard looked at Elizabeth Jane in silence, and then without another word, he went out into the street. At last Farfrey returned. Lucetta was greatly soothed by his arrival, and he hardly left her side all night, when immediately after he had returned, she tried to tell him the secret which weighed so heavily on her. He made her stop in case talking should tire her too much. He assured her that there was plenty of time to tell him everything. What and how much Farfrey's wife finally explained to him of her past when they were alone that night cannot be told. That remained Farfrey's secret alone. Outside, Henchard kept a lonely watch. He was too full of shame and sadness to rest. At 4 o'clock, he saw the door of Farfrey's house open. A servant came out. Henchard went across and spoke to her, and she told him that Lucetta had died. Henchard went home. As for the plotters who had thought of the procession, fear of punishment over Lucetta's death prevented them from mentioning her love affair with Henchard ever again. At home, Henchard sat in front of his fire. So much for man's rivalry. He thought death alone was the winner. But about Elizabeth Jane, In all his sadness, she seemed to him to be the only light. He had liked the look of her face as she had answered him from the stairs of Farfrey's house. There had been affection in it, and above all things, what he wanted now was affection from someone who was good and pure. She was not his own, yet for the first time he had a faint dream that he might get to like her as his own, if she would only continue to love him. A gentle footstep approached the cottage and entered. A hand tapped lightly on his door. Henchard's face brightened, for he knew the sounds came from Elizabeth Jane. She came into his room looking pale and said, "Have you heard?" She asked. "Mrs. Farfrae died about an hour ago." "I know it," said Henchard. "I have only just come from there myself. It is so very good of you, Elizabeth Jane, to come and tell me. You must be so tired out too, with sitting up. Go and rest in the other room, and I'll call you when breakfast is ready." Elizabeth Jane went and lay down. She could hear her stepfather moving around, getting things ready in the other room. She thought of Lucetta, of her dreadful and unexpected death, and presently she fell asleep.